I'm sorry. Oh, excellent, Will. We were just going to incent you, keep your major goals.
Oh, well.
Okay, adoption of minutes, I'm sorry, yes, before public comment. Any questions, issues around the minutes? No, okay, moved to approve, and seconded, done, those in favor? Those carried, good. Okay, so now we go public comment.
Yes, you are your voting members on this one.
You want to come up and say
Not on
something?
the other one, so I gotta remember which one's which.
Hi, my name is Julie Sage. I think we spoke.
Oh,
before.
hi Julie,
Yeah.
so that's you, okay.
Yeah.
Now, you
So
want?
I want to.
Okay.
I'm here to more or less represent the Bowen Island Food Sovereignty Group that I've been part of for the past 2 years, and which is a subgroup of the Ag Alliance and the Bowen Transition Group.
I'm sorry, Echo Alliance? Is that what you
The
said? Agriculture.
Agricultural Alliance, the BAG group, and Bowen in Transition. So I'm an agronomist. I've been doing some research on food system sustainability here on Bowen and how could we make a food system that's more sustainable. And that starts with topsoil, because we live on a rock. Before producing any sort of food, that's the first thing to look into. So of course, I've been looking into the composting facility and you know where things are at. I also had a meeting with Councillor Maureen Nicholson, which was very helpful in giving me the whole story and where things are at the municipality. So I've been looking at this because from an agronomist point of view, this is just the first step of anything related to food system sustainability. Been going around talking to small food producers on the island and doing some research on the ALR and talking to the ALC, people in Metro Vancouver. To be honest with you, I don't know where this is going to go. I see a lot of enthusiasm and support from people, but also some sort of delusion and frustration about what should be happening and is not happening. So if anything, it's been a really interesting research project so far, and we'll see how to move that forward. I've been studying the new island plan, and I think in terms of resilience and self-reliance, there's a few actions that could be looked into. So yeah, I just wanted to introduce myself and let you know what I'm working on a voluntary basis at this point, and we'll see where that goes. Yeah.
And well, thank you so much for coming. And and you're connected with Denise, I believe. Is that?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she was planning to organize a meeting around March to
Okay.
talk about that. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's
Great.
it.
Any questions, folks?
Is there any, aside from your sort of information gathering stage that you're at, are there any specific projects that you're already embarking on or interested in?
Well, I think, yes, what I'm interested in is regenerative agriculture, generally speaking, because of its potential for climate action, for its potential for community resilience as well. I think it has, food has a potential to bring people together, and there is already a good level of education, I think, on Bowen from residents that we are vulnerable and that we should be more resilient. I think the unifying topic is definitely composting because it makes a lot of sense in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and just the fact that people bring in topsoil that costs a bit of money and that currently is being sent to Pemberton. This is where our organic waste is being sent. So yeah, it's not an easy task, but again, from an agronomist point of view, this is the first place to start. But then I think, in terms of policy, there's also maybe potentially bylaws to look into to make it easier for people to produce food. And I need to dig further into this. I know that the City of Victoria has done a lot of work, and I'm in touch with their municipal food policy person there. There's a lot of information out there. A lot of people doing great things Canada-wise. I attended the Food Secure Canada annual meeting in Montreal last November, and I will be attending the Living Soil Symposium at the end of the month. And these are the conferences where you get the opportunity to see what's happening very locally in Canada, which is inspiring. And I think Bowen is a very interesting case study, which is also why I'm so interested in it from an agronomist point of view. It's a semi-closed system. Bowen has a rural history and a farming history as well. The demographic is now very different, but it's not incompatible with bringing more food system sustainability. But that would mean, how do you define that? And what are the indicators? What are the indicators for resilience on Bowen? This needs to be defined, and this needs to be a collaborative project with, Bowen Transition, the Ag Alliance, hopefully the municipality, also the food bank, because food system sustainability also has to do with food justice and making affordable, nutritious food for everybody. So it's ambitious, but it's also a very systemic approach, and you can't really, touch on one project without delving with the rest. And this is why it has to be collaborative and multi-stakeholder, involving businesses on the island and looking at where to gain efficiencies as well in terms of costing and labor.
Have you also been in contact with the Islands Trust?
Yes, I have. Very briefly, they sent me a couple of very interesting reports that I started reading. But yeah, I'm also in touch with them, and Metro Vancouver and the City of Vancouver as well. So yeah, that's a work.
You have lots of resources. So
Yes.
good. Yeah.
Anyways, I won't take more of your time.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'd be
Yeah.
interested in, you suggested, bylaws or ways that municipalities be involved, so that would be very interesting. So
Yeah,
thanks for your work.
yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, after public comments, our first one is the election of chair. So, council, you probably heard from other meetings perhaps, but council felt that it'd be best to not have councillors as chairs. So, we have a vice chair, but Laura, you could decide what you want to do, but
Also the annual election.
it's the annual election anyway, that's right. Yeah. So, the way we do that is we just ask for nominations. And the floor is open for nominations.
I would like to nominate Will as chair.
I would like to counter-nominate Alan Whitehead as chair.
Is this how it works?
Okay, well, I'm going to slow it down. I'm going to ask if you will accept the nomination.
Reluctantly,
Okay.
just because I'm bouncing back from a health issue.
Yeah.
I have a couple of other things on the burner, but one should be prepared to do these things, so.
Well, thank you very much. Are you actually going to nominate? I mean, we don't have to vote against each other. But you want to nominate Alan?
I would like to
Okay.
nominate Alan.
Yeah. Alan?
I am reluctant to accept the nomination.
I think I heard that before. Did I hear that?
Everyone here?
And actually, I'm going to decline the nomination. Thank you very much anyway, for personal reasons.
I also was thinking about you as a chair, obviously, you're a great chair in many ways, but there could be a potential conflict, it would seem to me, with your work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a factor for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so are there other nominations?
I understand Mark is now the chair of another group, so.
Yes.
he-
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
The other thing I want to make sure we follow in the footsteps of our present federal government and make sure that we have strong, equal representation gender-wise. And so we must,
Feminism.
I think we must have, well, I would strongly suggest, not demand, that we have a female vice chair.
Well, we'll get to that in a
Yeah.
minute. We'll get to that in a minute. So are there any other nominations? And I'll ask a third time. And any other nominations? Okay, seeing none, you're willing to, you're acclaimed
Sure.
then, Will? That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Really appreciate that. And I'm gonna trade places with you in a moment, but we'll just do the vice chair. So nominations for vice chair.
Laura.
Laura, will you accept the nomination? Position of vice chair?
Yeah, excellent.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Are there any other nominations?
Yeah, I can. I'm still on the board at the Montessori school, and
Yeah,
we're pretty busy, but I'm gonna step down in July,
okay.
so.
Just say a little bit about the role. Chairing a meeting, once you know kind of the format, it's all here, it's pretty easy. But the effort really is the agenda. And what I did to develop the agenda is I just worked with staff. And Steph is great at keeping lists and, of the things that we said we wanted to do. And so I would just sit down with Steph. I thought that was easy. And you could do it on the phone, you could do it through email, but I just dropped by the office, we did it in 15 minutes off it. So it's.
I will say I'll be a bit of a slow start because I missed the last couple of meetings, and so there's a work plan that is this blank black box to me at the moment. So
Well, we'll go through it. We'll go through it in the agenda, so we'll get an opportunity to have a look. Okay, we've had, I think, Laura nominated. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? And I'll ask a second and now a third time, other nominations. So seeing none, Laura, welcome to your continued role as vice chair. Thank you very much. Okay, so Will, I'm going to pack up unless you want to chair from there. I find it easier to chair from here because you can see.
I'm flexible. Let's chat. The chatting comes to it.
Oh, yeah, we'll trade jackets. Will, if you want, I went through the agenda. If you want me to help in any way or.
I will expect to be corrected when necessary.
Yeah, so you just follow the blue sheet, basically. We've done, then 4.3, the next is the schedule, so, yeah.
So for the schedule, so I'll just jump in on this.
Please.
And I'll go back to my corner. It had evolved to Wednesday. What is the first Wednesday at 7 p.m. was last year's availability. Is that okay with everybody this year?
Yes.
Yep.
And then we have it except for August. Is that okay with everybody?
I think we should do August anyway.
So to give the
Oh,
counselors
look
a
at him
break.
go. Right, that didn't take long.
I think it's just.
Giddy with power.
really covered.
Drunk with power.
Do we need a recommendation on, or do we just know?
It's nice to agree on things. Get a little record. I'll throw it into my.
Okay,
Then do we
so I'll
do a
move.
motion?
I'll move that the Environment and Climate Action Committee resolve to meet the first Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. except August.
Seconded by Ellen Whitehead. Opposed? In favor?
Okay.
None. Now, action items from November 7th. I went digging and I couldn't find them.
Fortunately,
They are linked to the agenda, and there are 3. So the nutrient,
right. So I did contact Louise. She indicated that she had contacted the folks with this digester, and she hadn't heard back from them. And when I was reminded by this agenda, I contacted her again. I haven't heard back from her. So we don't have a response yet from the digester people as to what the nutrient content of that material is.
Maybe Mark has something he's got on
Well, this is an agenda item, maybe we
Yeah.
should just leave
But
it
I
to
do have
that
a
agenda
comment.
item, and we'll just,
One of the problems with this process is the nutrient value of the byproduct is gonna change with every batch. You're never really gonna be, unless you test every batch, it's always gonna be different. And you never know, with something like this, it's gonna be really easy to, and I'm not making a case for not using it as a growing medium, but you can, it's easy to build up toxic levels of heavy metals and things like that in compost. So you would need some sort of testing process, but it would have to be like, we're gonna sell this bag and we've tested this bag or this batch. So you can't just take a test and be confident it's always gonna be at those levels.
Are you talking about micronutrients then, or mostly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Micro.
Yeah, I mean, and
Well, 'cause
nitrogen,
it's
potassium, any of the nutrients, but typically,
Contaminants.
I just thought, anti-contaminants as well.
Yeah.
Okay. We visited a compost, the place in Whistler, and the way that they described it was that you had to have a certain amount of like nitrogen and carbon and to make a good compost, so that those would be maybe consistent.
oh, for sure, that's for the composting process, the CN ratio.
Mhm.
But you're always throwing organic material in, and
Yeah.
you can't build up like molybdenum. You don't, right? Like, it's a micronutrient that all plants use, but it's easy to get to toxic levels of it. So you
Yeah.
never, I'm not saying that that's gonna happen,
Yeah.
but you never know. You can't do just one test and then just say that's what it's always gonna be. It depends on what goes into the process.
So where, I've been away for a while, so where are we on this?
so we can skip down to, we're already starting to talk about 6.1, and let's just talk about it for a little, because I'll just explain what's happened.
Yeah.
You'll see it in our municipality's action plan. Composting was part of it. And we've had a discussion, with Louise, and composting has become more difficult because closing down some of the facilities in the city that goes all the way to Pemberton. The tipping fee's gone up, and also our volumes have gone up of compost here on the island, or materials to compost on the island. So there was a big study done that Maureen was involved in during the last council, and I'm not quite sure, quite a few, what's his name was involved in this for years. Peter, Taggart was involved for years. He's left the island, unfortunately. But they looked at a whole lot of options. It was kind of ready to go, but council decided not to for some reasons. I'm not quite sure. We don't need to get into that right now. But their council is now feeling that the time is ready to relook at that because the volumes are at the level where we need to do that. There's an opportunity. So what we need to do is we need to strike a group. Like, we can't sort of solve the problem in a meeting room like this, but we need to go back into the work that was done before. And Maureen sent me a link, and I can send everybody a link to that. And there's a huge amount of work that was done.
Yeah.
And then we've got one more new system that Marcus actually saw in Calgary, and that we've been talking about here. So we need to sort of go back to the earlier study, have a look at it, look at what we can find out from this material, this process as well, see which one is sized right for Bowen, which one would work economically for Bowen, and then what kind of results do we get from it? Do we get the kind of nutrients we're looking for, or is it some of the stuff that I've seen for this is sort of they want to use it as a fuel rather than soil. So these are all the things that we need to have a long discussion about, and probably a subcommittee to work on.
How you were going to say something?
Yeah, just to add to this, the original presentation by, was it WINSPORT who came?
Yeah.
Those
What's this company, Mark?
Okay.
The company that I saw was Echo Growth.
Okay.
That's the company, the WINSPORT, it's a presentation of a
Okay.
project that they did. Yeah,
So
yeah.
in this case, it was Louise had identified, or Bowen Waste had identified this other system,
Yeah.
and invited the speakers
Yeah.
representatives of that system to come, and they gave us a presentation on it. And as we went through the presentation, it dawned on me that this was largely a dehydration system rather than a composting system.
Yeah.
And the byproduct was intended to be used as a fuel or possibly a soil amendment. We were curious about what the nutrient content of that would be, and certainly I would expect it to be a range
Yeah.
rather than a fixed
Right.
value, because it is gonna vary with each batch or,
Right.
but we still have to find that out.
Yeah, but also assuming it wouldn't be alive. You know, basically it dries it, heats it in some way or another, and it does it in a handful of hours,
Yeah.
whatever, it's 48 hours or something,
Yeah.
24 hours.
So it's
So-
not a biological.
So it's not about, so it's not gonna be alive like you would, so all the, you know, bio things that you want in there that are working for you won't be there.
Yeah.
So once you add it, it would be like peat moss, I guess, and that kind of a
I
thing.
mean, in terms of using it as a growing medium, I mean, that was the point that I was trying to make last time was, it's a great amendment. You can compost it
Yeah.
and the nutrients will become available to plants and it would be great, but we're talking something that's very concentrated. So you wouldn't take a bag of this stuff and grow a tomato plant out of it.
Yeah.
It just, there's no structure to it. I mean, it's great as an amendment to soil.
So,
Yeah.
so is there a set of criteria that have to be met by these processes that are being looked at? I'm thinking there's smell, you know, there's consistency of product, a requirement to have it being a biological entity. Are there those kind of criteria set up for this one?
So I know just from schooling 20 years ago, so things have changed. If you're going to sell an amendment as soil, it has to be free of weeds, pathogens, and all that stuff. If you're going to put something in terms of numbers, like 20, 20, 20, the numbers of the potassium, the nitrogen, it has to be 20, 20, 20.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are regulations around it. I don't know what the current regulations would be.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, to actually do this well, there's other criteria we need to be thinking of. We need to make sure we have a careful assessment of what the volume is, and then issues around smell, space, a market, and costs, and energy input. So we need, I think what we should do, if we want to work on this, we should send a note back to council asking, I haven't sort of got the note figured out in my head yet, but it would say that we're willing to work on this, but we would need council leadership in terms of the really criteria we're looking for, you know, the kind of the business plan that we're looking for, as well as, you know, a full set of criteria that we should be studying in order to do this. And we might need to hire professional help, I have no idea. But it needs to be, it has to be a council project, but we're willing to, you know, we've got some expertise here that we can work on it. I think we need to send something back to council to say if they want us to work on it, we need some clear leadership, guidance as to what it is they want us to do,
So do we need to have a motion on that?
I would think so.
Yeah.
Hey, Steph?
Did you say you do think so?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so I've got a bit of a whereas, so whereas the Environment Committee would be interested in creating a subcommittee to work on the composting.
Yeah, it's in our work plan.
Infrastructure.
I could say whereas it's in, if you can grab our work plan, it's in our, it's,
Okay, has included,
it's,
Okay.
someone find it quickly, it's in number,
and is it in the island plan?
it's in the island plan and it's in our plan. So
Composting.
whereas it's in the municipality's island plan
Yeah.
and it's in,
Item 2 of the action, that's action item, sorry.
So I do want to mention too, though, there might be some money for doing a feasibility study for composting.
we might need to, when I was talking to Maureen about it, all that great work that was done by Pete Taggart and the other committee, we need to go back and validate all those numbers. Like, there's a lot of stuff in there about assumptions around volume, assumptions around energy, assumptions around all kinds of stuff like that. So
Yes.
those need to be validated. So
Yes.
how to do that, I don't know. We need money.
And certainly validating that will require the involvement of Bowen Waste because they're
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
yes, that's right.
on the ground.
Well, here it is, it's under waste management, the first line, reduce off-island transportation of waste, renewable resource, continue to research organic waste diversion, work with the municipality to assess the feasibility of integrating the digester into the Bowen Waste contract, and so on. So I think, Steph, yeah, the way, whereas, a couple of whereases, it's in our plan, and it's in the municipality's plan.
Therefore, we resolve that the committee recommend that council, I would often say direct staff to do something, or that council create a set of criteria or a business plan, or provide
Yeah.
clear direction.
Direct staff to,
Yeah,
To,
direct
uh,
staff to.
Council directs staff to, my concern with that is that you want council to be directing the
I
committee,
know,
so.
yeah, exactly. Let's see what, we could find the council plan, it's right in here somewhere.
Yeah, I got it online.
And there might be
Right
some
there.
words that we can use from that as well.
So what, do you remember what priority it is, Councillor?
Climate action, logging,
You might actually search the word compost.
oh, we'll find it in 2 seconds, because we just got a few pages here.
Got it.
really,
You're fast.
You found it?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, there it is.
So priority.
Resume
one.
exploring feasibility of on-island composting of organics, given increasing problems with higher costs of disposal. Okay. So, to explore the feasibility, we're just thinking out loud here. We're happy to contribute and to work on this. It's part of our work plan, but we need clear guidance from council
Council provide guidance.
as to, I don't know, it's,
Parameters?
yeah, it's
It's
always,
like what is like what?
whose name is beside this in the,
Oh, okay.
probably mine, eh?
Probably yours. Hey,
Sue Ellen, David Hawking, and Allison Morse,
no.
and Lorraine Nicholson.
so,
Oh, it's specific though.
Oh, sorry, I was looking at the wrong page.
Yeah.
Is that the same?
No,
Sorry.
we've lost, oh, yeah,
I'm
scroll
sorry.
down,
I'm
stop,
sorry.
go up.
Okay.
No, roll back up, it was just up above that.
Key contacts, no, right there?
No, this is
the
B1.
next one.
Oh, yeah, you're right, I'm sorry.
No, it's B1,
Bounce right back to us.
Yeah,
And the ATC.
infrastructure and ecosystems, it's the same as this one, infrastructure and ecosystems.
okay.
so,
But
but,
it's specific.
yeah, I see there's two options. We could ask for directions, or we could ourselves suggest directions that we'd send back to staff and council for approval.
Yeah.
That might be the way to do it from the point of view of moving forward faster, because we've been
Yeah.
discussing this and thinking about it, and maybe if we could spend some time now, or put that on agenda for the next meeting. What,
David was actually touching on the elements, basically go back and review the previous
yeah,
composting study,
Yeah.
add newer, updated information.
Add newer updated
Yeah.
And
information,
then
work
distill out
with our waste provider.
waste provider.
Yeah, that's not, that
doesn't sound good.
doesn't sound good, does it? Our waste contractor,
yeah.
our provider of waste contracts,
Services.
services.
So those are 2 bullets.
I guess my question is, could we do that by ourselves, or do we need an expert? Like, if you read the report, it gets into detail that gets beyond my ability to say, well, I think we'll need more energy than that, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's pretty, I think,
I think it'd be good to have,
We might
somebody
need a
who's got
budget.
that level of expertise.
Yeah. and I don't know who that is.
I haven't read the report, so I don't.
Yeah, it's a pretty big report.
So if you want it, I can send you a link to where they will be.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and if you need to find your own way there, it's gonna be in past committees. under the on-island
Okay,
composting group.
we'll look at that.
And so he has all these, like reference, so I can report to council, final report, all those.
Terms of reference, that's a simple concept. We need terms of reference for the study.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Rather than,
So that,
and that's,
Dated.
yeah.
So are we, what are we now suggesting? We get terms of reference from council?
That's generally what they would do. And staff would do it for council, and they would go to a council meeting, and, you know,
Okay,
and they might ask us for help in developing the terms of reference, but, you know.
so
might-
that
might not.
council, committee recommend that council direct staff to provide a terms of reference for the study?
Yeah, for an
For a
on-island,
feasibility study?
the feasibility of on-island.
Updated on-island
Yeah, composting.
composting study.
Yeah,
For a feasibility study
Yeah.
for,
So, I mean, like I was saying, there might be some money. I'm waiting to hear back.
Yeah.
It could be $10,000 for a feasibility study.
Mm-hmm.
So we can pass that on to professionals
yeah,
at some point.
that would probably.
But I think it might be a good idea for everyone to, bring ideas to the table.
Yeah.
They only look, I have been through this report before, and they looked at very specific types of
Yeah.
composters.
yeah.
And they made a
Things
recommendation.
have
for one.
probably changed and been updated.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, some of the numbers are maybe not quite right in there. I think $10,000 is a good amount of money, but I don't know, maybe if we bring our ideas to the professionals and, you know, have some of the legwork done, that
Yeah.
maybe we'll get more out of it.
Yeah.
It's just, or tell them
Yeah.
which options we want them to look at.
Exactly, yeah. It would also be useful to talk to any members of the old committee who might still be around, to bring them back in and
so that was, I think the terms of reference of that committee were supposed to be 4 or 6 members of the public. It never really got there. It was Peter,
yeah.
Taggart and Mary Ellen DeGrace were the only members of the public. But
Okay.
as far as staff and counselors,
I have spoken with some staff members about it.
Maureen, Kathy, Bob, Daniel, wow.
I don't know how
You're
much
talking to
Bob and
some-
Daniel were
Yeah.
participating.
Oh, I spoke with some staff members about it, and, you know, they said that at the end of the day, they just didn't think that it was gonna work, like that was their kind of, feeling coming out of out of that working group. And, you know, there was suggestions as to, like, there wasn't enough volume, waste, I think was the problem at the
Yeah,
time.
that's what I heard.
And that, you know, there was ideas of barging in more compost,
Yeah.
but then we kind of defeated the
Yeah.
purpose,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it was volume, and then it was suggested that, you know, to reduce our THGs, or no, it was, I don't know, something about we would only pick up, or we wouldn't pick up, we would have people come there.
Yeah.
And that defeated the purpose as well, and
Yeah.
so there was, the way that they were gonna make it work, it wouldn't have worked.
Mhm.
You know, the end result wouldn't have been,
And the big, oh, sorry, Carrie.
yeah, no, that's fine. Go ahead.
Sorry.
I'm done.
The big problem with composting facilities like this is there's no use for this huge volume of compost that you start to produce. This is the problem that Vancouver's running into. They've composted all this stuff. They collect all this compost, but no one wants it. Like, some people want it, but there's this massive volume. And this is what happened in Calgary, as I was told, that Calgary has set up this big composting facility, thinking that they've got all this agriculture around them, but again, compost is an amendment, it's not soil. So farmers only need so much of it, and they're still left over with this huge volume of compost that they just end up putting in a landfill.
Oh,
And
terrible.
Vancouver is the same way, I'm told. So, and that's the problem that you run into, is there's just,
It's the big problem of, you know, so much stuff's coming from elsewhere on the planet, and all of
Right.
a sudden it's all here. So
Right, right. Bananas from other places and become.
I mean, it's great, I mean, especially if we get, you know, food security things going and you're gonna get more people growing it. I still think you're just gonna have a lot of compost left over that you're gonna end up.
Okay, well, that's an important thing to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it might be necessary to work with the food security group to integrate a compost system.
Yeah.
with their.
People who
work, too.
want it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the garden club comes to mind.
Yeah.
And, you know, things like that.
Well, and there's a thing for the feasibility study, that's one of the questions we need, like, what's the need for compost on the island? Like, what is a ballpark volume for what
Yeah.
these different groups
I
need?
mean, I buy a truckload every year.
Right.
and if compost, real compost isn't the answer, maybe some of these fuel options might make some sense,
And that's,
if that's an issue.
that's my thought that I've been going through, because, and I'll get to, when we're finished this discussion, the things I wanted to point out from this, what I included in the agenda, is that we have some sort of, here's some of our green waste that goes for gardeners and food people, and then what's left over goes to an energy source thing, which I think will work, but I don't know the numbers, but I'll get into that when we're finished the study, or this conversation.
So what you're saying, Mark, is that there's some advantages to this, even though it produces compost that is of lower quality, let's call it, than.
Well, my thought was just don't even get into this digester, just take some of our, because from Louise's numbers,
Yeah.
we're producing, in 2017, we produced 560 tons of food and garden waste combined.
Right.
It's a massive amount of
It's
waste,
huge.
right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think your gardeners on the island and food producers on the island are gonna
Absorb
use,
that.
like, that's just a huge amount. And plus, it's only gonna increase and
Yeah,
increase.
although it reduces a whole lot in the composting process.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But one of the ideas, I think, where you're getting at is the other one that also produces something that you can burn.
Right.
It's
And that's what the process that I
Right.
wanted to present on is
Right.
all about. I mean, you can take that byproduct
Yeah.
and compost it
Yeah.
and use it in that process. I mean, I would throw it straight into my garden. I wouldn't have a problem
Yeah,
in small amounts, but I wouldn't like
okay.
excavate a hole and fill it with this byproduct.
In that regard, just that subset, which could be the biochar, faces the same challenge,
Yeah.
absorbability out
Yeah.
in the surrounding area. The demand is not gonna be that high, but
Right.
it is another stream of a byproduct that can
Yeah.
come out of this organic matter.
Okay.
The final question I have is, this system, does it necessarily have to be just consumer and agriculture? We got a lot of forest,
That's a good point.
and forest can absorb quite a bit of
Yeah.
carbon. And so, I'm, I don't know, if there's a viable way of distributing compost material in a forest system without doing it damage or, but
That's a fantastic idea.
That's it. I'm just thinking, like, this byproduct from this digester, I mean, we saw it's like a coffee ground. I mean, if you could put it in a helicopter, like, put a dusting, I mean, it'd be awesome. Like, fungus would go crazy and everything would go crazy.
But-
I don't know how people.
I'm sure there are examples elsewhere. Colorado is very advanced in these types of
Yeah.
things, where we could look into it. As you were describing that, I pictured this growing, the old logger rows with this growing mound of stuff, and beyond it, it didn't quite reach. Then you need the chopper
Yeah.
to go further.
so.
Or Pacific bark blowers. Drive down the logging road.
Yeah, so there's some out of the box thinking that we can investigate here too. We're gonna do a motion, and
Yeah.
we've been bouncing around all over the place.
So let's hear
Do
what
we
you.
have an action item on that, though, or are you gonna look into Colorado, or just talking about that?
I was just making a note to
Want me
start
to write it
looking
down?
into that. Sure, please, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I have, the committee recommend that council direct staff to provide terms of reference for an on-island composting feasibility study.
Okay.
It's the final
So I think-
section.
Maybe you have a couple of whereases at the front?
Yeah,
So
so,
whereas it's in this
whereas
plan.
the Environment Committee has included composting since 2009, 2019 work plan, and whereas council has included investment in composting in its 2019 island plan, priority B1.
Do we need to say, and this committee is willing to, I mean, it's kind of obvious that we're willing to work on it since it's in the plan.
Yeah,
All right. Okay.
Oh, I think this is right up our alley.
I think that's what we're here for.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's what direct staff to provide in terms of reference from online. Does
okay.
that work?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Do you want to use examples, like, because you have a couple bullets here, which includes a review of the previous online composting working group study, consulting with local provider of waste services,
Yeah.
defining the amount of need for compost on the island.
Yeah.
Do you want to include those 3 bullets?
Sure,
Yeah.
it'll sort of help get the ball rolling.
Get the car running. Yeah, sounds good.
And is there a way of saying et cetera in this
Oh,
language?
including but not limited to?
Including but
Yes.
not limited to,
Yeah.
yeah. That's-
That is so good. It's like she's done this 1,000
Yeah.
times before.
That's
Thank
good.
God.
Want to hear it again?
Yes, please.
Actually, before we do that, so I just say it's included in our work plan, and then with the island plan, I said investment. I don't know why I said that. Is it investment?
No.
It's a commitment.
Commitment, thank you.
Says it right here.
Change.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what's the verb then for what our work plan?
It's just an element of the work plan, or it's one of the deliverables,
Oh, okay.
It says strategic action.
strategic action? Yeah, it's a strategic action in the committee's work plan.
Yeah.
Okay. To explore?
Well, the objective is, I'm reading there, to reduce off-island transportation of waste and use this waste as a renewable resource, but that's very broad.
So convert waste as to.
Working municipalities to assess the feasibility of integrating the yeah, let's get too narrow. Keep it broad.
I'll just say has included composting, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, whereas the committee has included composting in its 2019 work plan, and whereas council has included a commitment to composting in its 2019 island plan, priority B1, therefore be resolved that the committee recommend that council direct staff to provide terms of reference for an on-island composting feasibility study, including but not limited to a review of the working group study, consultation with local waste provider of waste services, and definition of the need, of the amount of need for composting on Long Island.
Demand?
No, the need, the demand for
Finished
the
product.
finished product
Yeah.
of the compost.
Yeah.
There's certainly a demand for composting on the island.
Yeah.
Demand
To
for-
investigate the demand for a
Yeah.
finished product or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
What were we just talking about? I was writing something down, I said how. It's gone.
We're talking about voting.
No.
Oh.
Are we set for that motion?
Yep.
Mover?
So who wants to move
I'll
it?
move it.
Mark,
Mark, move it.
seconder, David? So, put that motion, in favor? Opposed? Unanimous.
All right.
So David, I'm going to depend on you a bit on today because I'm
Yeah, so we're,
just walking into this, so.
yeah, so Mark, you were gonna actually give a presentation on the,
I just wanted to.
so why don't you do
yeah,
that?
Just a couple of little points here. Oh, it's not numbered. Okay, so in this package that I included,
Yeah, I'm not quite sure, yeah, because there's different names here, so that.
yeah, and this is, so the place that I went and saw,
Yeah.
the main reason they take their organics, they break it down, and they burn it in a boiler. I didn't realize at the time that they already have a boiler that they use. So there's a boiler in existence that takes this stuff and burns it.
Do you want to use that too?
Oh,
Because it's a PDF, it won't click. You can
Okay.
use that.
okay.
So,
So, hang on just a second, just a second. So if you read through
Yeah.
some of the projects they've done, they're already doing this. So basically, what I wanted to point out was the throughput is 100 pounds an hour. Hours of operation, if you get 8, that produces 57.2 kilowatt hours a day. I don't know what these numbers, like in terms of electricity, I don't know what 57.2 kilowatt hours per day does for you. But the company that I went and saw, they used this to heat their water for the laundry service they do. You can use this to heat water for a building. So at 100 pounds an hour for 8 hours, okay, let me back up. According to Louise's numbers, in 2017, she collected 560 tons of food and garden waste. Once you put it through the digester, it reduces the volume and the weight down to by 80%. You're left with 134 tons, which equals 734 pounds per day. And this is where someone else who knows about electricity has to come in and say, if, for example, the fire hall, it had one of these bio boilers, would it need to run 8 hours a day to keep the water hot for the firemen? Or the community center, or whatever.
Exactly.
So, from the people that I've talked to, it's like, yeah, that's a stupid amount. Of course you have enough. Duh. But I don't know, and I don't want to make
Something we can
suppositions.
investigate, yeah.
So, and the other thing that came from this presentation, and I had a really weird conversation with a guy that I talked to like 6 months ago. Yeah, were you not paying attention? No, I guess I wasn't paying attention. So one of the other things that they do is, and this whole presentation, this is for a project they did in Ontario. This has a lot of really good information if you want to go through it. So one of the things that they can accept,
Was it the wood?
it's the wood.
Pallets?
Pallets.
That was there.
Yeah, but it's up here, cardboard. So this thing will take cardboard.
The
So what-
Russians will love us.
Right? So there's another source from Bird. Instead of taking our cardboard to town, we throw it in this digester, and now we get more biomass to burn to heat a building, the community center, whatever. I don't know. Yeah, so those are the 2 points that I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
It was like, there is a boiler that accepts this material already. So by doing this, we're no longer shipping any of our organics off island. So we save our transportation footprint and all that stuff. We get a free energy source to heat a building. And this creates a closed carbon loop.
Yeah.
So, and getting back to the whole compost, and that's why I asked about what is the need on the island for finished compost. Because that would come out of the stream, and I think that's important as well, but I think we're there. I think we already generate enough. It's only gonna go up. Our usage, we're gonna get more people on the island, we're gonna generate more waste. So I think it's something that we should be looking into, yeah.
So we have a surplus of raw material, that's for sure.
I mean, I think so. I mean, when you take all the Louise collected 560 tons of food and garden waste. I work for a landscaper. We take stuff to town all the time. Other gardening companies on the island take stuff to town all the time.
I was thinking the same thing.
Like
There'd be
it's
a lot
like
more
it's
waste.
stupid. Like I wouldn't want to put a number on it, but there's a lot more than 560 tons out there.
I see. Yeah.
Right? And including stuff like even the municipality, when they do brushing roads or do work, the organics they have, they could go. And I don't want to go down this road too far, but this digester gets to temperatures that kills weeds, seeds.
Yeah.
You could put that in there and then it gets burned. I mean, you get into the whole thing with transporting weeds around, blah, blah, blah. But there is that. And my final point is that I was going through the Community Energy Association newsletter that's in this package. There's a Clean Communities Fund where if you're going a public building, so not the fire hall, but like the community center, not the municipal hall part of it, but the theater, you can get 40% of funding from the feds and 33% from the province. So that's 73% of the funding for this. And there are some costs associated in this package. Those are not current costs. It'd probably be a rough idea.
So that funding you're talking about is for the boiler, digester,
I think it could be applicable,
heat generating
Yeah.
system?
the whole thing, if you're gonna use it. Well, I don't know about the whole thing, but the boiler in the building, I would
Mhm.
think, according to, yeah, it's in the package, but according to, that's exactly what it's for, is to reduce your carbon footprint and switch to more renewable resources.
Yeah, so, in January, I was sort of looking into getting grants for, okay, so the composting thing came up. In January, I was looking into the grants. The grants that I saw, they've passed now, they were too early for us. But the main ones required you to generate energy. So I looked at closed systems, like, the closed systems where you take it and you generate methane, and I talked to some of the experts at Metro Vancouver, and they said, no, you don't want to be doing that. It's, you got an explosive gas, it's a big deal. You have to be much more careful. So, but this would generate energy that would offset GHGs. You're right.
And you don't do anything to it. It's,
Yeah.
there's a big hopper, you take the stuff that I had at the meeting last year, you put it in the hopper, there's an auger that just feeds it into the boiler. You're done. And they have this thing, and I'm kicking myself for not picking up on it and not putting it together, but, so the exhaust that comes in out of it, they spritz like water into it and create carbonic acid or something. So it's actually carbon negative,
Oh, wow.
or carbon positive.
They
Although
capture the carbon out of
Although I
it.
question that, because you're gonna sell the acid to someone, whoever uses it, they're gonna use it, which would release the carbon. I don't know, but, yeah.
Depends, yeah, on whether that carbon gets bound or.
Or, yeah, for sure, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
The other question I have is do we have to stick with one system? And it makes it more complex, but my point being is if there's a biocomposting site that's doing enough composting to fill the needs of people looking for compost on hold. And then we have the boiler system taking whatever else is there, any excess to the needs. Doing it that way would be covering two sets of needs, and I think it would be more. I'd feel more comfortable thinking that there's going to be real compost involved here.
Oh, absolutely, I totally agree. And you know what, I mean, if you get a buildup of compost that you're using to give to, if you have too much of it, because that stuff smells, well, throw it in the digester. Turn it into the stuff that you're gonna burn.
And Mark, what about the smell of the digester system? Is
There's
it
no smell.
no s- So it could be in a public building without, and in a population center without causing any
The only thing that comes,
discomfort.
all the digester does is just heat the material. So you get water vapor released, that's where the loss of the volume comes from, and it breaks it down. And as long as it stays dry, it doesn't, because it's 100% organic,
Yeah.
so it doesn't, as long as it's dry, it doesn't compost, and it will keep odor-free, I don't know how long,
Yeah.
until you burn it or add water.
So the system would have to have dry storage involved. Just
You-
because, you produce it and then you,
Well, and that's
Brainstorm.
kind of part of my point, like,
Yeah.
at first I was thinking, do we produce enough to make it viable to rely to heat the water for the fire hall or whatever? I'm thinking, like, we still have too much.
yeah.
I mean, we're talking like, if she's collected 506 tons,
Yeah.
like, boy, that's a lot.
So I guess another thing we should be looking at is ways of reducing our amount of waste that we're producing too,
Absolutely.
all around. So, yeah, so,
Probably some of you have seen the Love Food Hate Waste campaign.
Which part?
Love Food Hate Waste.
Oh,
So Metro Vancouver has a campaign. It started in the UK, I was involved in starting it here, actually, at Metro Vancouver, and now it's a national program that Metro Vancouver and the National Zero Waste Council is working on. So if you Google Love Food Hate Waste, or go to Metro Vancouver, Love Food Hate Waste, you see the program. Basically, it shows you how much.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Demonstrates the astonishing amount of food that we waste.
Yeah. So,
And that's just related to food.
yeah.
That's just
I guess the other thing that would be very useful, and maybe the previous work has been done, is what is the breakdown of waste that we're producing, and compostable waste. I would expect a big portion of it's food, and then there's garden waste. And what else?
And it's
what
seasonal
percent-
too, Will. So,
Yeah.
the garden waste in the summer and most of the food waste in the winter. So you have to have storage, as somebody was saying. We need to be storing the carbon
Yeah.
to mix in with the food from the
And let's not forget the whole, I mean, kind of what got us onto this was the Ready Potatoes saying, well, we want compostable food packaging.
Yeah.
We don't want to keep it on island, so there's that stream as well.
Yeah. So we probably better rock along here since
Yes.
it's now 8 o'clock and I think we're going to be finished around then. No, really, no.
So,
So this was
the
CS.
action items that we were
Yeah, we
looking at.
didn't finish the,
Yeah,
they're on
so
page 9.
I think there's just one about seat, which is for Sarah, and that would maybe be transferred over to Lucky Carla.
I'm sorry, I didn't see this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can do it for next time if you'd like.
Sure. And I haven't done number 2. I was supposed to call Ellen. I guess because I wasn't sure exactly what our plan was for the compost.
No, I feel like it was, it's about the contract still, right?
I don't know. I think it's just premature because we're not sure
Yeah.
what we're doing here. Yeah.
So I guess we're now at, so we're, we've deferred the 2 other action items to the next agenda. And so it looks like we're looking at strategic planning at 6.2.
Yeah.
The work plan, that's in the package.
Yeah.
And what, just as a little aside, what did you folks assign me to?
Oh, and we did assign you something, I
Yeah, I
think.
think it was most of it.
Yeah.
I mean, really, the intent when we put this on the agenda was, it was, one of the things that was supposed to happen is council was going to review all the work plans of all the committees. Council has not done that. So
Well, they
council-
haven't. Oh, okay.
No, but when you look at our work plan, it aligns pretty well with a lot of stuff in the council's plans. You look at, Steph, I guess it was Steph who circled in the blue on pages 34, 35.
That's Sarah.
Yep.
It was Sarah.
That's Carla.
Carla did that? Thanks, Carla.
Okay, what's the whoa?
So you can see the climate action stuff, it aligns with what we were doing on the climate action side. And we've got the composting, climate conversations, and so on. And then the industrial scale logging, the conservation development is on here somewhere. Oh, there it is at the top of page 34. Embed conservation development principles of
Yes.
municipal planning and so on. And that's in our plan as well.
Yep.
So there's a lot of alignment, I think, is the good news. And I think, it'd be fun for people just to, I guess our plan must be on the website now, Steph, probably, is it? Our island plan, or not?
Yeah, this is where I thought it
Pulled it off the
was
website? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's worth, don't need to do it right now, but worth having a look at it. Yeah, it's in the link in the, you can find it easily on the website. Just go have a look at our island plan, I think council, speaking of as a council member, I think we did a reasonable job. I think it's a pretty good plan.
Yeah.
Mind you, when you get in the middle of things, you kind of, you know, you're sort of too down into it to really know whether you've missed something or not, but it seemed like, I think you did a pretty good job.
Well, I see from the excerpt is, there's a site alteration bylaw contemplation, so.
Yeah,
I like
yeah,
that.
that's right, site alteration bylaw, which we had on ours as well. Yeah.
So Will, I was just seeing here, for example, in answer to your question, what had you been assigned? Will to research island trust programs under ensure there's an adequate supply of water for nature consumption and fire protection.
We didn't give it any major, just water.
Well, that's the little one.
Yeah, that's right, you weren't here when we were doing that, that's right, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used your name liberally. Yeah, so just have a read through it.
Yeah.
You say we thought of using your name literally, but you're lucky, you ended up with just one.
It's really, there's just one, is that right? Yeah. Yeah, Mark's there a lot. Alan's there quite a bit. And Sarah, of course.
What do we do with Sue Ellen's?
Will takes Sue Ellen's, that
There you
that
go.
makes sense, right?
There we go.
So I was sort of prepared.
Oh, right, so one thing, if you look at 6.3 on our agenda, we were going to assign tasks. We sort of did that in the work plan, but maybe we should, do we have time? It's 8 o'clock, I guess we probably do. We've got your piece at the end, Mark?
It's very, very short.
Okay. Maybe it would be useful for us then to go through the work plan and just read each thing and say, okay, how are we gonna get this done? Who will work on it if we don't have it assigned?
And that starts on page.
29.
Page 30?
29.
29? Oh, yeah, 29. Wow.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, there's your name in the first one.
So where it currently says Sarah, that becomes Carla nowadays? Is that what's happening?
I guess
or-
so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, right, because
No.
she was gonna do that because they have a program about their cisterns.
Yeah.
I think that's what it came
They do.
from.
Yeah,
So,
You know,
so how do you want to do this?
I'm not sure, I think this will take too long.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good stuff here, and we can't do it all at once.
Well, she put the dotted line around each section, right? So water conservation, she's put a dotted line around, which I think the community group is number one.
Oh, is that right? Oh,
Yeah.
I was wondering what the
And
dotted
the
line
next
was.
one is the waste management, she put a dotted line around most.
Okay.
I think, because it was gonna be priority, high, medium, low, and then
That's
people felt
right.
uncomfortable saying it's a
Yeah.
low priority, so
Right.
she just highlighted one.
Okay,
based
so
on the
let's look at our water conservation, then our number one is the dotted line around getting data.
Mhm. And adopt the network of groundwater monitoring stations, review the water level data as available. And I did start on this confirming the existing potential sources of data by getting in touch with John Reed.
Yeah.
And he sort of verbally described to me 2 wells, but I still plan to get back to him with a map. Go, okay, here are the wells that he had raised in the past, back when Bob Turner was mayor.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
And
So,
Islands
I'll continue
Trust
on
has a water specialist right now, named Will. And I think they've done a well water workshop here a year ago.
Year
2
and
years
a half ago, but
And was quite useful. They've got a fair bit of data too, I think.
From Boyle,
Hmm?
from Bowen?
Yep.
you know that we're in the provincial groundwater monitoring
And
network?
yes.
Yeah? Okay,
Thanks, yeah.
sure. So we have 2 wells, I think,
Right.
and,
There's 2?
There's 2 now, is there?
well,
It was
there's,
originally just 1, but,
yeah, there's 2. I think there might be some things to sign to, but there's one in Singing Woods, pretty much.
Oh,
and
that
then
one.
another one over in Valhalla.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And priority area, I'm just throwing it out there, he's sent priority areas, so if anyone knows, because you were talking about wells, if you know of more wells, he wants to look at the aquifer that's, there's one like really big one that is basically the whole southeast of the island kind of, or well it's the south. So he wants the west side of that one, so Cape Roger Curtis kind of, like everything from Cowan Road kind of to the west.
To the west.
And so anything in there, and then there's another smaller one that is around Blue Water and Beaufort. So
Yes,
there's,
there was.
I could send you a map anyways, but if you are talking to them about stuff, they don't really like to have wells on private property,
Right.
but if they can't find anything else, then that's an option. The one in Singing Woods is on private property, they don't use the well.
Right.
So, it's an option, and especially, so right now, I think Bonnie's idea with it was, let's get a couple going, and council wasn't super keen on the idea, but we thought once we had some data to show them, and to show them how valuable it was, that maybe we could come back and say, here, this is what we're doing here. Can we have some money to drill another one?
Well, and that's what I was gonna say, with the province, would they drill, if they want one, would they pay to drill a well?
I think it's us that has to pay.
Okay.
I think they do the monitoring. They maybe, I don't know, I'm not sure, Mark. They might pitch in, I don't know.
Yeah, well, but if they're, I'm just thinking, if they're looking for a well, like, well, here, go drill one here, fill your boots.
Yeah.
So what would be looking, if we were able to achieve what we wanted to do here, what would it look like at the end of the year? What would we have done?
I think have a well in every aquifer.
Yeah.
And
That would be the ideal
and a
scenario.
chart that shows it goes down in the summer and up in the winter.
I think also, we've got a new Water Sustainability Act
Right.
that I think we should be looking at to make sure that we're doing things that will use that act. Talking to Sue Ellen a bit from the Islands Trust point of view, they're looking at that as a tool that might help protect against big forestry. Because now there's something with some teeth, that might trump some of the forestry laws that just basically say you can't interfere with the getting money out of the forest.
And
So-
definitely that Water Sustainability Act, whereas the old Water Act didn't mention groundwater explicitly,
Yeah.
that one does.
Yeah.
So that's a strengthening for us, for
Yeah.
sure.
But would it be useful if, say, Alan and Will sort of worked on a bit of a plan for how we might work on this during the year? Would that be, you two both probably have the highest level of knowledge?
Sure.
And working with the Islands Trust data and so on?
Yeah.
So just sort of sketch out a bit of we've got really a high level thing here, but take it to a little bit where we want to go, and if there are resources, like getting wells drilled, of course, somebody has to cough up with some dough.
At least we can identify where we need to.
Exactly, where the data is weak, where the data is strong, what the good data shows us, what the new act says we need to do, stuff like that. Yeah. And work with Carla, of course, because you've got quite a bit of knowledge, as you just described. All right, well, that's useful, so let's have a look at the next one, which is, we've already dealt with this. The organic waste. And we've got a motion on it, so I think we're... if you go to the next one,
Oh my God.
the step code, council's already ahead of us.
So you guys are really successful.
Yeah. Because we wanted
In that
to
3-month hiatus.
be, we wanted to be at step 3, in our little dotted line, we wanted to be at step 3 of the energy code by the fall of 2021. Council just passed it to have it in fall of 2020.
Oh,
Wow.
Step 3.
All right.
Yeah, it's in our strategic plan.
Yeah.
Hey,
Or no, maybe it was in a motion at, it's in a
It was
motion at
just a
council.
resolution.
Resolution at council the other
Yeah.
day. Yeah.
So I
So
think,
is it done, like, this
It's
thing's
done.
got a big check mark
It's-
on it, or?
Tick.
no, it's not really, I
Yeah.
mean,
Okay.
I don't think this is done.
Carla.
It's, well, it's voted that, yes,
voted
we're,
that we have it.
we're gonna do it, but we don't know how we're gonna do it. And I
Yeah.
think this
Okay, so we
action
can
is
now offer help.
figuring out the how.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they need to get a pathway and it says assist in the establishment of a consultation program and a schedule.
All right, maybe we should have another recommendation then. Or should we, Steph, what do you think? Like we, we've got it in our plan, council just passed.
Consultation
A
program
resolution.
schedule, so is that you, I mean, these consultation program, it sounds like Emma.
The step code?
What is the doing that consultation plan, is that you?
Well, I know that Sarah worked on the report for council.
Okay.
I think that Greg should be really involved
Greg,
because he actually
very much.
understands
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
And
it
if you
is.
read through the Community Energy Association newsletter,
Yeah,
they talk a lot about the step code and
Step
how
code, yeah.
different jurisdictions have been,
yeah.
some of the programs that they've been setting up
Yeah.
and workshops and things like that.
Yeah.
That can be helpful.
So do you wanna do that same thing, David, where you get a couple people to work us on the subcommittee on that?
Do we want to do that? Okay.
You can, this maybe isn't like a super, well, okay, sorry.
Talk to Greg, maybe report back with, talk to Greg and he's not ready to start yet, or.
Greg would be, I mean,
What, I was gonna say maybe it's not a super rush right now because I think we need to adopt step 1 is
Yeah,
the
that's true.
first step, and that's gonna be in October, I think.
of this year.
Of this
Yeah.
year. And so, I mean, I know we have it as a priority on how to meet step 3, but I think maybe step 1 is the first step.
Yeah. She's smart.
thinker on the committee.
Maybe it's sort of direction, rather than a motion and all that, it's sort of direction to Carla, is that, okay, when you need, as you're doing this, when you need help, ask us. And, we're
Yeah.
happy to help with
Yeah.
whatever communication or,
Yeah, and Greg seemed like he had a pretty kind of plan about
Right.
how he wanted things to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. If you wanna, I'll make sure, one of my action items would just be to talk to staff and make sure that they're aware that you wanna be involved
Yeah.
in whatever
And I
process.
think he knows that. I mean, he
I
presented.
don't know.
he presented to us.
Oh, they
He
did,
pres- he
okay.
did.
Oh, yeah, no, he was here.
He was great.
It was a great conversation.
That's
But
great.
maybe in
Yeah.
this specific consultation schedule,
Or,
yeah.
yeah, I'll talk to Emma about it as well. I don't know if Emma's gonna end up working on it now that Sarah's leaving, or, I don't know.
She
It's a
just,
little bit iffy.
she just whips out those consultation
I
plans.
know,
They're
it's amazing.
calendar of events, and then I
Yeah.
think the Heritage Commission put together a plan, and she just went, just ripped it up, because she just knows the order things are supposed to go in, and I wouldn't, it'd be a great resource. I'm sure she'll get her fingerprints on it somewhere.
So basically, we're saying on this item, when council needs help, call on us, and Carla is the contact that will tell us when and what's needed. Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
okay, shall we move to the next one?
Yeah, the Municipal Natural Assets Initiative. So,
No.
some of you
To
know,
review the land use bylaw, top of the page.
where's that?
Oh,
So
no.
it's a little narrow.
Oh, it's I thought there's a dotted line on mine.
I think that was the dotted line.
That's still
from-
part
Oh,
of
from
the.
the- okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
page.
But there is the one under,
Transportation,
Yeah.
supporting of transportation, so communicate with BIMTAC as appropriate, so,
Yeah, that's almost a liaison.
yeah, it's a liaison. I mean, I'm on BIMTAC.
That's you.
So you'll be the liaison?
Sure. And,
Do you think,
sorry, go
do you think it's worth then, just thinking that cycle improvements and BIMTAC used to have a little, like, information items from what the other group was doing. So, for example, what Emma just presented for BIMTech
Yeah,
about the work plan,
be good to present
we
here.
could present it, or even just have, we can make sure that we have regular standing update, maybe? To do like a standing
Yeah.
update,
Yes,
so this is
please.
what BIMTech did
Yeah,
Yeah.
this month, like maybe the minutes or
Yeah.
report, or link to the agenda even.
Sure.
yeah,
Something,
yeah.
and then I could speak to it if
Yeah.
there's any, yeah,
Okay.
Right,
Yeah.
to drill into what's
yeah,
really.
whatever's,
Yeah.
yeah. That sounds
And,
good.
and, you know, the link to the agenda would give us a little, the
Yeah.
rest of us a little,
Yeah.
bump, and then we can
Yeah.
ask you questions.
Exactly,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. What was this all about and why did you do that? And, yeah, that's great, great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we don't just ignore it, it's, yeah.
So we move to the next one?
Yeah, the MNIAI. So Mark, you've done some work on this.
So
Or-
I don't have anything, my next step, I was gonna bring this up.
Yeah.
And I was hoping that council would approve the work plan, because I don't know, but, so my next.
Well, I can talk about it from a council perspective.
Okay.
So Sue Ellen and Maureen and I went to a course on environmental economics. And there was a presentation there by the Suzuki Foundation on the work they're doing on exactly
Oh,
this,
perfect.
and they did Gibson's and so on. And so, you know, we'd like to be able to work on this, but one of the things is it's the asset management work that has to be done by all municipalities, which is basically looking at hard assets, you know, looking at your roads, your culverts, your buildings, and all that kind of stuff, and developing a plan for making sure that they're can be replaced and repaired and you know, operated properly. So we're going to be working, we haven't got that done yet, but we'll be starting that in this term somehow, I'm not sure exactly, but staff will be doing that work. So this has to fit in there because it's an attempt to put a money value on protecting the forests so that you don't need to make the culvert bigger, kind of thing. That sort of thing. So it needs to fit into the other program. So we need the other program to be kind of thought out a little bit so that we can then see how we can fit this in, but we need help. And so it could be going to the Suzuki Foundation, but also Metro Vancouver is doing some work on this. As part of their Climate 2050 program, they've got some kind of educational stuff that they're doing, where they're going to be doing units for training municipal staff on how to implement carbon solutions.
Yeah.
And so this is one of the solutions.
Yeah.
So in other words, there's some work coming down on this that'll be really helpful, but we need to sort of get our own act together in terms of doing our hard assets and fit this into it somehow. So this is work we have to do. It'd be good to read up on it and you know,
Yeah.
become more knowledgeable about it.
Yeah.
Talk to people at Gibson's, find out what they've done,
Yeah.
read it online, stuff like that, share things, just so that when we start to need to move on this, we're all becoming a bit more knowledgeable on that.
And that's where I was at, because I'm
Yeah.
kind of, I've read a lot of stuff on it, and it's
Yeah.
all really good stuff.
Yeah.
And I know Maureen had said about the asset management aspect, and the question that I had was, does this actually help us with asset management if we sign up with this? My next step was to just contact someone from the program, but I didn't want to do that until I brought it up.
I think if you do any research and share it around, we'd love it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was thinking if someone wanted to come to the committee and present something, I don't know if we're there yet, or.
We're not quite there yet, probably, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, well, I'll just carry on with what I'm
Yeah.
doing and keep you guys
Yeah.
updated.
Yeah, and, you know, I bumped into this in other jurisdictions too, like, City of Toronto of all things is doing their green assets. They were doing it 5 to 7 years ago, they were initiating that, so, I think this is something that's, its time has come. I'm excited that we're gonna be doing it, so.
I encourage everyone, like, go and visit the Municipal Natural Assets Initiative website. There's a list of, I haven't actually gone on to it for a few months, but they have a list of 5 or 6 projects that they've had ongoing. And actually, one of them, I was just there last year when I was back in New Brunswick, is this huge wetland area that some company wants to just burn it and pave it, and they've been doing some really good stuff. I go, well, yes, you can develop it, if we, you know, this is where all the Bay of Fundy floods, and you don't want to put this, and we'll
Yeah.
save this to
Yeah, it's really good stuff. There's complexities here too. I want to give you an example that I've been observing on Bowen, which is Grafton Lake.
Yeah.
It is a reservoir, and it's also being used now as a stormwater detention system. It's been managed, it's being drawn down so that it can take a lot of stormwater,
Yeah.
because the culverts on Grafton Road, Mount Gardner Road and Miller Road are a little weak right now, so they don't want them to flood. But in the meantime, by doing that, there are water quality impacts, which further justifies the need for a filtration plant, which costs a lot of money.
Right.
So, you know, rolling back from that, it's like, really the best thing is to leave that lake alone, just have it mimic natural conditions as much as possible. And yes, indeed, you know, repair those culverts so that they aren't about to blow out with the next flood. But there's complexities operationally and capital assets
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And even I noticed, because I've been watching the lake and, I mean, across on the south side, that, I don't know what it's, Ravenbrook? Is that the one that comes down to the road?
Yes.
Like that, this year, there's been a couple of rain events that's been
Yeah.
crazy. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if we can get into the natural assets higher up in the
Right.
watershed,
Yeah.
retain some of that water, and then release it in the summer when we get the drought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think we've got climate change is aggravating all this too. You know, just the Killarney Creek had some major erosion at Miller Road there.
Oh, a terminal.
Terminal, yeah. And
It's
it was, you know, talking to the staff in the park, there, it was highest water they'd ever seen.
Yeah.
And so I think
We're there.
yeah,
We're there.
yeah,
Complicated by beavers
yes,
playing with culverts. It's complex.
oh, yeah. So, that one is Mark's baby, and we're gonna be, continuing to, follow that and,
I'll dig a little bit deeper now and see.
Yeah.
There's
and
no rush.
I'm excited to see all this stuff, so, I think this is, I'm so happy to see that this is going to be happening, and it's gonna be integrated with the hard assets. Carlo, you were gonna say something.
Oh, well, you can go if you were saying something about this, I was gonna change stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it might help us on logging as well.
Yes,
So I was gonna raise that in terms of redoing our brochure, our
Definitely.
anti-logging
yeah, definitely.
thing. Yes.
And Carlo?
Okay.
Oh, I was just gonna say, before we move on,
Okay.
I think the reason we were kind of going through this was so that we know what to put on the agenda, right?
Yeah.
What do we want to work on next?
Yeah.
Do we want to go back to building efficiency, this section, and just say what the priority is, if not the one that we circled?
Ooh. Sarah never thought of that.
Oh, is she watching?
I was thinking,
What were you thinking of?
Which page is this on?
Sorry.
we were on the same page, basically,
Yeah,
The spread.
the same spread, yeah, 30, 31.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
I wasn't here when you made the
Yeah.
work plan, so I'm not totally sure what the next priority would be for you guys. And I might not be as much of an expert as Sarah was on these kinds of things, I don't know if you guys are. But maybe the fee rebate or the education program, I think both those are important parts. I think everything is stepped out of here, right?
Yeah.
Just about. Oh, but yeah, I don't know if anyone else wants to work on any of those in particular.
Well, like the fee rebate to encourage step code, the last one, I mean, I guess we'd have to see, you know, we need to sort of, well, I mean, they do step one first, so we'd have to get to step one, and then, because it's an easy step, and there's no, I don't think they would think that we'd need to have a fee rebate for that, but probably might for when, to encourage, to get to go to number 3, I would guess. But that would all be in a conversation with Greg, I think, in trying to understand, okay, what are the challenges?
Yeah.
What are the challenges, and how can we kind of calm everybody down if some people are starting to get upset and say, hey, this is gonna be too hard, or whatever.
Education,
Yeah,
the biggest piece
It's-
of that.
yeah.
So you're saying education would trump the
rebate.
fee rebate?
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, I
They
just
might
want,
be joined at the hip.
what's that, sorry?
They might be joined
Yeah,
at the hip.
exactly, it could be,
It's like
yeah.
carrot and carrot.
Carrot stick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea of the two of them together.
Yeah,
Okay, so why don't we just put a little star on the two, and I mean, it's not necessarily that it has to get done next meeting or anything, but
Yep.
those are the
Yeah.
next priorities.
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay.
so, yeah, I think we'll have to keep on coming back to
Coming
this
back
one
to
as
this.
it's
I agree,
developing.
yeah,
Sure.
Yeah.
yeah. So I think we're into new business, and that's,
Oh, hold on, 'cause we did, sorry, environmental protection. And then next one is climate action.
oh, you wanna do a review and prioritize?
No, it was just the last one was climate action, that was it.
One more.
Yeah,
We haven't done it?
and there isn't a priority on
Oh,
it
yeah.
right
Yeah,
now.
that's right.
Fine.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, the carrot was the big,
Prep, seek, and
big-
conversations.
I did, I wasn't here last year, but I did it the year before, the carrot reporting, and basically Maureen, Sue Ellen, Bonnie, and I just sat in council chambers and went over the list and wrote things in. I don't know how important it is. I mean, we do it, we write a bunch of stuff on there. I
Yeah,
don't think they really look at it or give us more money or less money based on what we put on there on the report. We just have, it's basically just all the money that we spent,
Yeah.
or all the, right? So we're getting a rebate, like,
it's just a report of all the things that we've done,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it just, it needs sitting down and doing it.
yeah, exactly.
And
I
And when do we do it?
maybe we should, I feel it's May, maybe?
Yeah, I think so, something like that.
sorry, what did you say?
May or April,
May.
it might, maybe by May 1st.
I don't know.
Could we
It's-
do it in
I think
April?
Maureen would tell us, but I.
There
don't
was
know.
a climate action, one of Marine's climate action series, because I was there, where a group of people sat down and went through the Carib and came up with ideas.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think
But
that
I'm
was,
sure that,
I think that was part of it too, back a year or so ago.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of years ago,
Yeah, a couple of years ago,
so,
so.
I don't know. But I mean,
It's really good to have new ideas, like the things that we're planning on doing and
Right.
what
Yeah.
we're in the process of doing and that kind of stuff. And it's a good way, I guess, to start that conversation and
Yeah.
keep the ball rolling. But as long as we're all doing all the stuff, then we just throw it
right.
in. You know?
And then, yeah,
what's written in our plan right now is ECAAC to assist in summarizing initiatives. Do you see it tweaking that wording any way to make it clearer?
yeah.
You know what, that's probably even fine. Why don't I just, I'll
I don't
probably
even
do it the same
know.
way and I could bring it back to you
Yeah.
guys.
I
And
don't
then you
even
guys
know what
can
we've
take a look
committed to.
and
Yeah, in our SEEP. I don't even know what we've committed to, but I know there's,
in the energy and emissions plan.
yeah,
Okay.
we've got. That's
Uh,
it, but I don't know
There's a lot in there.
where. Yeah.
There's a lot. I was part
Oh,
of
now
that.
I'm remembering it, yeah, that's right.
It's, a lot of it is doable. There's a lot of small stuff on there. but
It's a lot of small stuff.
There is a
Yeah.
lot of small stuff, but there's some big stuff too that, I don't know.
I can
Well,
try to find
There's
it
small
for
stuff,
you.
there's big stuff, hard stuff, easy stuff.
I think
you
we
know?
better,
So the action list, yeah.
That's,
I think we
It's too
better
bad we
call
didn't
that
do
a
a
bit of a
review.
priority. I mean, it's an action plan that we're supposed to be doing, and most of us don't even remember what's in it,
Yeah.
including you. So I could suggest,
That makes me feel better.
so that's already an action item for me is to go through the,
if that would be great if you could, I think we should put that on our next meeting agenda, so we
Sure.
get up to speed on that.
Was that already in one of our agendas?
Yes, and that's where I have it, and
Okay,
there it
good.
is.
Nice, awesome.
But we've got that as a
It's
next
this,
agenda.
that's right. Oh, now I remember.
Yeah.
So
This.
much,
It's so much.
so small font.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember not wanting to read it. I was thinking, it's important, we have to do this.
Yeah.
I know, it's kind of too bad there's so many things because it takes away a little
But
bit.
it's good stuff, like it's.
Yeah.
Accomplishable goals
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
a good
Yeah.
aspect of it.
See, there's big things, there's small
Yeah.
things, there's hard things, there's.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is what we went together
You
through
know,
a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need to bring this to our next agenda, go
Yeah.
through it and figure out what the heck we're going to do, because there are all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Look at 2019, like we're going to
Reduce the government
review zoning
barriers.
bylaw for opportunities to improve energy performance. We're going to expedited permits to support
Yeah.
stretch code. Okay, well, actually, that might be okay.
Stretch code.
Sign on to solar-ready building code provision. Wow.
Wow.
Okay. There's a lot here.
Yeah, I gotta go over that.
Yeah. So if we can put that on the next agenda, well, we should all read it ahead of time, so we have some thoughts,
Yeah,
rather than going through it at the meeting saying, look at that.
Again.
I also like to suggest that priorities for the climate action is the continued climate conversations.
Yeah, yeah. And
I think that's-
Maureen leads that.
She
Yeah.
has, she's gone and then had reasons for stalling, or not stalling, she has reasons for not having, because she had an action item a couple of meetings ago to
Did she?
plan on. And then when she hadn't done that, she had her reasons for it.
Okay.
I can't remember what they were.
So is Maureen still
Yeah.
on the committee?
Yeah.
She's,
Yeah,
okay.
she couldn't come tonight. Yeah.
So we'll just,
Park that one and bring it up with Maureen
Yeah.
and see what she's,
Yeah.
what plans are. She's kind of led that, but there's no reason that she has to do it. If she's, wants to pass that on, that's fine. But I think she's pretty keen on it.
yeah, she's done a great job up
Yeah.
to now.
Yeah.
So, that's that. And according to this,
7.1.
7.1?
Yeah. West Coast Environmental Law Liability.
I got confused, it's not blue sheet.
Yes, I think that's me too.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
Pages 37 to 40.
I looked at those letters, they look great.
Yeah.
What's the action on this?
Yeah, so Mark, what's the action? Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, this is the West Coast Environmental Law initiative. I mean, I remember seeing a bunch of this going around like late last year where
Yeah.
municipalities were signing on to write these letters to the 20 biggest fossil fuel companies on the planet. And I think it's a good, I don't think Chevron is gonna, say, oh, the vote on municipality, we better clean our act up now. But adding a voice,
Yeah.
right? It's just, I think it's a great thing, it's something that, I hope I'm being pessimistic and not realistic, but I think things are gonna get bad. And this is just a good thing to do, I think, in the future,
Yeah.
when you look at generations coming after us, if we can say, I did something,
Yeah.
instead of, I did nothing.
Yeah.
So, and you know what, there's no harm in writing this letter.
Yeah,
And it makes the municipality look good,
yeah.
I think, to
Well,
join the group.
It's what municipalities, all of us should do.
I think so.
West Vancouver did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what kind of brought it to my attention.
Yeah.
I saw that West Van was.
Yeah, so is this an action we should do, or do we ask
We ask.
council to do this?
So is it a
Yes.
recommendation from our committee to council?
That's what it would be.
So, a motion?
Yeah. But just before we do that, do we have, when I looked through the links and so on, I couldn't really find kind of a draft letter and who the 20, or whatever the number was, of big companies and so
No,
on.
you could, no,
Maybe I
there's,
just didn't go to the right
if you
links.
go, one of the links.
We need to make it easy for council. that's
Yeah,
all.
Yeah.
one of the links has the letter that
This
West
one?
Van,
Oh,
so it's not.
so that's the second one I want to talk about.
Okay, so West Vancouver's letters.
Yes, so,
And then
yeah, go down, there's a link.
here's send climate accountability letters in red, but
Yes,
that's gonna have an example.
well, there we go.
and then, that's a package from their agenda. the West Van Council sent the first one back to staff to rewrite it, and then the letter's included in that.
Staff review letters. Sorry, what did you say? Sorry.
If you go down for, yeah, if you go down, it's an
Oh,
attachment. to
there
this.
we have, okay, I never found that when I was going through everything.
Yeah.
Let you know, oh, wow. Okay,
It's a really interesting concept because we are all, it's like addicts complaining to their pushers.
yeah.
You
It's a
know?
good way to put it. It's yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and something in, I don't know if it's in the letter that West Coast Environmental sent to the council or not, or something I read was, you know, the companies, they're making all this money, and some of that money is funneled into denying climate change.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's like the whole cigarette tobacco thing.
Yes,
So,
definitely.
this is kind of the feel-good part of it. I have another recommendation. Part of this letter, they say that you can take, and West Vancouver did this as well, was to support provincial legislation. This is the last page of the letter that's in the package. BC local, I'm sorry, it's on 40 of 59. So taking action beyond letters, the middle point. BC's local governments can add their voices to asking that BC enact laws to clarify legal responsibility of fossil fuel companies for local climate costs. Such legislation has been debated in Ontario's legislature, while more than 50 BC-based organizations have called on Premier John Horgan to enact a similar law. And basically what it is, it's the Liability for Climate-Related Harms Act. It's basically a legal tool to hold
Yeah.
the fossil fuel companies, to make them have to pay. So it's like, I'm a smoker. Cigarettes are expensive. A lot of that money that I pay goes into the healthcare system. I go and I buy a bottle of pop. I pay a 5-cent deposit. It's kind of the same thing, just on a global scale, I think.
Okay, so what would our recommendation to council be?
For which one?
Well, we could do both, or do.
So
them separately?
I've written up a couple here.
Okay.
So for the letter that we talked about first, that the ECAAC recommend that council begin, okay, so environmental law is actually asking us to do two things, write a letter, but also track the costs of climate change that are being incurred by the municipality. So my recommendation reads that the ECAAC recommend that council begin tracking the costs of climate change that are being incurred by the Bowen community, and that council send a climate accountability letter to 20 of the world's largest fossil fuel companies demanding that they pay a share of the cost of climate change as per the request from the West Coast Environmental Law in the letter dated December 10th. I had that written down if you have it.
So it's two
And then,
things in one.
pardon? I don't know if we can you not do?
No, I'm just observing that.
Okay.
Okay, on the first one, tracking the costs. Tracking the costs,
Sorry.
it's hard to do,
It is hard to
because
do.
you don't know, all right, so we just had a wharf that got damaged by that storm. So council is sort of assuming that this is part of climate chaos, is that kind of thing. And so we've actually had a conversation saying, it looks like we're gonna have a budget, an additional budget each year to fix stuff that gets wrecked by storms. But it really is hard to say, because without a scientist doing a really detailed analysis, you don't know actually
Yeah,
what caused what.
absolutely.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
And,
I think
and what
David-
value does that data have if you're
Yeah,
just guessing?
But is it a starting point?
Yeah.
Like at some point you have to start tracking things that, okay, we think this is climate related because the stairs at September Long Beach washed away and they've been there for years and years and years and no one had seen a storm like this, and the wharf
yeah,
washed away and no one's seen a storm like this, and Horseshoe Bay. I mean,
yeah.
the anecdotal evidence for climate change, it's building up, but you have to start tracking it at some point.
And I think the fact that council is now starting to budget.
That's amazing.
Yes, yeah.
Even just whatever that budget is the tracking of the effects of climate change. So,
I haven't
Well,
said they've
and maybe-
budgeted it, they've talked about budgeting.
Right.
yeah,
But maybe
Yeah.
that's all the tracking you need. Maybe if you say, well, you know what, the municipality has set aside $10,000, whatever, every year to fix stuff that we think came from climate change. You don't even have to point to a specific thing. We've just already taken this action because we think it's necessary. I don't know. The tracking part of it, I'm not,
Yeah.
I could take it a little bit.
I think we would have to sort of accept that there's uncertainty, but we could keep a roster of events and episodes, you know, like culverts blowing out or stairways washing away
We
or
had the culverts flowing out, yeah.
Yeah.
things like that, which hadn't been happening for the last 2 decades at least.
Yeah.
And yes, indeed, they could be related to the age of some of this infrastructure, but also could be to the magnitude of the events. And so just documenting those, and later for me to get into the details, but keeping a list of them makes sense to me.
and the analogy with health and smoking is so clear, you know. You could go with the same thing, you know, that the number of people having to get lung transplants, I'm just making that up, but is increasing. So, and they're all smokers, so I think it works. You know, it's we should at least go through the motions, and this is one of those things that not doing anything is probably not the best move.
Mhm. Okay, well,
Contributing our voice.
let's hear the motion, and you typing
That
it?
the committee recommend that council begin tracking the costs of climate change that are being incurred by the Bowen Island community.
Yep.
And that council send a climate accountability letter to 20 of the world's largest fossil fuel companies demanding that they pay a share of the cost of climate change as per the request from West Coast Environmental Law in their letter dated December 10th, 2018.
I would suggest doing the order the opposite. The easy one first, and the one that some council members might quibble about as the second part.
Sure, I think so.
It makes sense tactically.
Yeah.
Reversing the two parts.
Yep.
Want to hear it again?
Yep.
The committee recommend that council send a climate accountability letter to 20 of the world's largest fossil fuel companies demanding that they pay a share of the cost of climate change as per the request from West Coast Environmental Law in a letter dated December 10th, 2018.
I'd like to just change the order a bit, so just read the first part.
That the committee recommend that council send a climate accountability letter
Stop. As recommended by the,
as per the request.
as per the request by the West Coast Environment, whatever that little
Uh-huh,
sentence was.
yeah.
And
As
then-
per the,
Yeah, and then instead of demanding that that would be objected. So it would use I'm thinking of another word, so just keep saying it.
requesting, suggesting.
Requiring or recommending, or just say the sentence again.
Send an accountability letter to 20 of the world's largest fossil fuel companies, asking that they pay.
As suggested by or as recommended by West Coast.
Oh, I left
Environmental
that
Law.
bit out, so
Yeah,
I'm trying to
okay,
find
keep
the
going.
verb.
Yeah,
Okay.
demanding that, keep going then, sorry, then, yeah.
Demanding that they pay a share of the cost of climate change.
So a synonym would be petition.
Yeah,
Okay, I love this game.
yeah.
Oh, we're gonna do it, you wanna do it, everyone together? Requesting, calling, commanding.
Requesting that they pay.
Dictate.
Requesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, requesting that they pay.
Yeah.
Insistence requested.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, the point is,
Begging.
Clamoring,
Yeah.
nesting.
Urging?
Urging.
Urging is.
I'd rather-
Who said that?
I just read it.
Oh,
yeah, urging is good, yeah.
you like urging?
I like requesting.
Yeah,
Requesting, urging,
Like requesting?
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, the-
Urging is stronger
Yeah,
than
strong
requesting.
requesting.
Okay, good enough.
Yeah.
Emotional.
Then they won't know what to do about this,
This is
because
like
it's, you know, you need a bunch of backup material, like you need, I mean, you know, so, like the letter from West Coast Environmental Law, the letter from West Vancouver, a list of the 20 companies and their addresses, you know, those kinds of things would have to be attached, so they have to be
Yes.
pulled out.
So
of
that's
there.
like a report.
It is unfortunately kind of like a, well, there are a few attachments.
Yeah. And what about, in an example, can you write the letter?
West Coast law has the letter that they say, hey, here's the example of the letter.
When
And,
you-
and the West Van's letter is in that pack, in the links that I sent.
Yeah.
Just copy and paste there, but
When you clicked on that letter before you did, I'm pretty sure it had a list of talking points.
Yes, it did.
So they do expect you, I think, to personalize it
Yeah.
and to go through. Maybe just can you go back button step? I don't know if
I
the
don't know which one it's on. Oh, here.
Yeah,
There.
example talking points.
Oh, there it is.
So I think they expect mayor and council to go through and
So
I mean-
can there,
I mean,
in
if
a
you-
recommendation like
you
this,
can
even
send a
be
letter using the
sort of
sample text
whereas
provided.
needed?
Oh, but please take a moment.
Or using the talking points provided, whatever.
The trouble is,
Let,
the trouble is, we're then asking, I hate asking staff, I mean, Carla's gotta write a letter, or then, and, I mean, I'm willing to write the letter. I just take the talking points and have a look at West Vans and I'd fiddle around with it a bit and come up with a letter. I could do that, but that's,
we could put it on our next agenda to talk about the talking points.
I could write a letter and present it on our next agenda.
let's do that.
Okay, I'll do that.
It's better than writing a letter by committee.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll just do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's-
It's on the action
Understand
items.
this process.
So I'm gonna
works,
take the
yeah.
text of this recommendation, include it in the body of the minutes and say that this was discussed and then deferred, the recommendation deferred to the next meeting?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, that's great. So then we'll have a package with them with a sample letter
Yeah.
that they could then, staff could then,
Sure.
the mayor could adjust or whatever. And they would also then be more likely to approve it if they sort of see what the letter is and they know they're not having to send Kathy to get staff to go come up with a letter and read a whole bunch of reports and
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So the second,
Yeah, the second one.
the whole, can I have my piece of paper back?
Mhm. Thank you.
They're looking to enact legislation or get people on board with enacting the legislation of the Liability for Climate-Related Harms Act. And they want to go there.
So do we have sample legislation somewhere? They're debating it and we can,
So it's akin to the tobacco
yeah.
thing, and this has been debated in Ontario. And again, it's the information, you can find it in the links that I included in
Yeah.
the agenda.
And this is municipal government asking provincial government.
Provincial government.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would suggest we ask them to ask both the provincial government and the Green Party. Just because, just the way things are with the Green Party having a bit of a hammer
Yeah.
with
Sure.
this present government, just get them involved too.
Mm-hmm.
Could I throw in the idea of sending this thought up the Islands Trust channel from voters?
Oh, that's a good
I think
idea.
that's a great idea.
That's a good idea.
Yep. So
Maybe,
have me talk to a counselor,
yeah.
a trustee.
I was just thinking strategically, the best way to go forward, would it be to talk to the Islands Trust and get a whole bunch of people to do it, rather than us do it? by ourselves first, or is it?
This isn't by ourselves, I mean, there's 50 BC-based organizations
Well,
who've already
called
called on.
So here's my suggestion. Bowen Island does it, and that I talked to one of our trustees about approaching Islands Trust to do it as a federation.
More the merrier.
Yeah.
Okay. Mark, have you got some wording then?
That the ECAAC recommend council write a letter to Premier John Horgan asking for the BC government, so, well, are we gonna wait until we see if we can get the Islands Trust on board, or do we wanna just do this as
I
we spell it
do
first?
them separate.
Okay.
That the ECAAC recommend that council write a letter to Premier John Horgan asking the BC government to enact a Liability for Climate-Related Harms Act to better enable local governments to hold fossil fuel companies accountable for the cost of climate change. It's the one we're working on.
Can I just ask, where did this letter come from? Like, because this is addressed to mayor and council, so this probably should have come before this.
Yeah, no, this,
Has this already been received by
I
them? Was it
believe
on
they
an
have.
agenda?
I don't, you know what, I don't recall, this came, I think, did you send this to me, Steph?
This
Noticing
came
that,
from,
that wasn't what.
is it Peter, what?
Peter Lucken?
Yeah,
Yeah.
is that who it's from? And it came from Hope, and it was sent to the mayor and council.
No, it wasn't Peter Lucken, I don't think, it was West Coast Environmental Law to
Yeah,
Rhode Island Municipality.
yeah, it's something.
Your mayor and
Because I don't
council.
think this is what you sent.
Oh, no, you asked
sent
me to
us
get it
the
on the
link.
council agenda.
Hmm?
Didn't you say it was on the council agenda?
It came, I think it came from, yeah, it was on our council agenda, is that where I got it from?
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
So
think,
have they
Yes,
already
we-
talked?
They've already, it's already been received. I'm just-
so I think you start it the same way.
Yeah.
Start it the same way by referencing this document.
Yes.
So recommends that, I need some words to link to this.
Oh, sorry, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So basically the same thing, just put as per the West
Yeah.
Coast Environmental Law letter.
yeah, as per the West Coast Environmental Law letter of December 10th, 2018.
Of December 10th.
2018, yeah,
Mhm.
from West Coast Environmental Law.
Uh-huh. That
And then-
council
Yeah, and do all the things that Mark said.
send, I'm sorry, writing is so cute, it's like art. You know, really old time.
It's
In
cute, but
Africa.
ineligible, or, you can't read it? Is that what
Send
you're
a climate,
saying?
is that an
Yeah.
Ellen, help me, it's so cute. Is that,
Well,
what
if
is
you
that?
get, no, not up there, oh, no, don't, the second one from the bottom, that one.
Oh, this
Oh,
one,
yeah.
oh, I'm
okay.
sorry, I missed.
Yeah, you're not gonna read that stuff.
Mike's
That's
done
hand
that,
scratching.
Premier John Horgan.
Okay. Sorry. Okay,
Right.
all right,
Asking-
limit to. Uh-huh.
Asking the BC government to enact a
Well, Mark, I've got to say, nobody's ever told me that my writing looks like art.
Yeah, no, I don't think that,
Yes. Squash bugs.
I'm also like, should have glasses too.
oh, yeah, right?
Arms,
act
okay. Mhm.
to better enable local governments to hold to hold
Fossil.
fossil fuel companies accountable for the costs of climate change.
Okay, thank you.
It's cute. Thanks, Brad.
Uh,
And he's got glasses.
That the committee recommend that as per the West Coast Environmental Law letter dated December 10th, 2019, council directs staff to write a letter, did you say that?
Yes.
Council directs staff,
Or do we even say that? Do we say that council write a letter?
Okay.
I think it should come from council.
It'll come, like staff will write it, obviously, but council writes,
Council.
send a letter.
Is it worth reminding council that they have reviewed this letter?
Yes.
So
That's
the
why,
letter
yeah.
reviewed at the meeting of such and
so,
such?
yeah, received at the,
Mhm.
as per letter dated December 10th, 2019,
Easy.
received by council for information,
Yeah,
because then they'll know that it wasn't
Yeah.
discussed and,
Yes, okay.
yeah.
well, I'm not crazy, I forget this. on, what was the date?
January 7th, 2019.
No, that's the date it would have been on the counter,
Oh,
but, that's.
Says received January 7th, that's not what you, oh, you want it
That's
on?
when it would have landed on someone's desk, so
Actually,
council, you sent it to me, Mark, I'll find it I can find it in Mark's email, because
Yeah.
you told me what email, right,
Okay.
so, and then it says staff find date. Council write a letter to Premier John Morgan asking by the BC government to enact asking the BC government to enact a liability for climate-related harms act to enable local government to hold fossil fuel companies accountable for the cost of climate change.
Get out of my sheet. Because I can read it.
Resolution?
I was wondering if we should simplify it to the words that they actually have in the letter, which is the BC enact laws to clarify the legal responsibility of fossil fuel companies for local climate costs. Just- That's what it said, that's exactly what we're being asked to do in the letter. And then, because they'll, I don't know,
And I put that in there because I found, I mean, I'm good with it, that's fine.
yeah.
You get it. I did find that wording in the West Van request, I believe.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah, by all means.
If it's just, then they can see it was in the letter, this is what they're asked to do.
Yes.
And it's just pulling it forward for them. So you see it, Steph, where it is in the letter?
Sorry.
it's right under seeking cost recovery.
Yeah. That- See where it says provincial legislation?
Oh my God.
No,
No,
Yeah,
It's on the last page.
last page,
provincial legislation.
there, provincial legislation. So
I see.
that, see, go along
And
to the
then
end of the
what's
first line, that BC enact laws to clarify the legal responsibility of fossil fuel companies for local climate costs.
Okay, so what do we have? BC government to enact a liability climate-related harms act, what would it, to
Get rid of that.
get rid of?
I think
So let's go, the
they
council
would
write a
say
letter
where
to
that come from,
Premier.
yeah. Just go, that
Asking
BC
that.
enact laws to clarify the legal responsibility, those are the exact words.
Starting from,
So asking that BC.
That BC.
asking
enact
that, okay.
laws. Yeah.
Asking that BC, okay. That's it?
Okay.
Just that sentence?
Yep.
Yeah.
That the committee recommend that as per the West Coast Environmental Law letter dated December 10th, received by council for information on a specified date, council write a letter to Premier John Morgan asking that BC enact laws to clarify the legal responsibility of fossil fuel companies for local climate costs.
Great.
Awesome. Thanks for your help.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark.
Move, motion? Mark,
Seconded.
seconded Alan, in favor? Passed.
Well done. Okay, look, it's 3 minutes to 9 and we're done.
Yeah. Next meeting?
So just to be clear, there's one recommendation going to council from this.
Yep.
And then I have text copied into the body of the minutes for the other recommendation that would be associated with
Yeah.
this
And
letter.
we'll do that next time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and it's now 8:20.
To the camera. No one watches these anyway, even your wife's watching.
I'm just looking at when the
Yeah.
agenda says we're done, it's
Yeah.
8:20, so we're done.
So,
Yeah, it was
I
too.
believe you've learned that from BC Ferries, haven't you?
So do we move adjournment? I move adjournment.
I second.
All right. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Will.
Nice job, Will.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go back to my old jacket. Stay the whole time. Wow.
You've got a better jacket.
So the half sound thing was it over at 9?